This is Hunter Muse.
And this is Chris Snipes, and you are listening
to The Melt.
I really don't have a set agenda. I've just got a sort of a list of things that I've heard you talk about on your podcast. And there happen to be a lot of things that I'm not that familiar with, like the Bock Saga and stuff like that. So
sure.
Why don't we just start off with what brought you to the kinds of subjects that you deal with on your podcast that you talk about?
Well, so I've been doing it since early 2020, but I've been into these subjects since I was 17 years old, 18 years old, back in the early 2000s. What started for me was psychedelics, because I was, a rebellious young teenager smoking pot, listening to death metal and fuck the system. That was my attitude, but I had never done psychedelics. And once that happened, my whole perspective on everything changed. I mean, I literally had to face the fact that my senses have been hiding most of reality, and just there was so much to unpack. But one thing that did it for me was that I had been rallying so hard against Western religion in my youth, and kind of following I actually made a post about this earlier about rock star atheists, how atheists, scientists, psychologists, philosophers, mathematicians, those types of people became like rock stars in the early 2000s. And even before then, but I caught on to it then. And we would friggin' go to like university debates and buy tickets like we were going to metal shows. We were so pumped to like get the church, man. But then I did psychedelics, and it was like, whoa, okay, atheism is too easy of an answer here. And so everything changed for me at that point. So I ended up in bookstores and libraries for years and just reading dead people in every category: history, symbolism, religion, philosophy, just you name it, science.
By psychedelics, you mean shrooms, LSD? What?
Started with shrooms for me. Yeah. Mushrooms were the most intense and mind melting, ego devouring, all that kind of stuff experience. And then, I did a lot of LSD and DMT, things like that. But shrooms, those were always extremely personal, in my opinion. People always talk about how acid is so intense, and I would do shrooms, but I wouldn't do acid. I'm like, well, I've had a lot more of a perma smile and like just love pouring all over me on acid compared to like the introspective deep dive that I've had on shrooms, But shrooms, I mean, both, it can happen either way.
Absolutely. Shrooms can be kind of heavy. I remember one time I usually just warf them down raw and, follow it with some food or something like that. But somebody had the idea to make tea, and it was so sedative. Like, it just fucking I felt like I weighed like 600 pounds, and it just sort of sinking into the couch like a sack of lead, and everything just felt so heavy. It didn't help that we had Einstürzende Neubauten on that we were listening to, and it felt not good. It was not a good, it was very, very sluggish, spiritually dark. So that's the last time I did mushroom tea. But you prefer tea, don't you?
I definitely prefer tea because I have a sensitive tummy.
Gotcha.
So,
That would be my wife too. Yeah,
yeah.
if she were to do it, she'd probably go with the tea.
Yeah. And I feel like what is interesting about doing psilocybin is that it's its own energy. And so every time you take it, it's a different experience. There's not one baseline that you can say, okay, this is what it's going to be.
One
It's
channel.
the plant and how the plant accepts you and how it was grown and where it was grown. And I really love that about it. So you
That's
have to be
cool.
in the right mindset. And there's been times when I've taken it and I've been with the wrong people
Oh,
and
yeah.
I've talked myself out of the trip. And I've said,
Yeah.
nope, we're not going down. We're not taking it this time. And
So-
I could sober myself up, which
Really?
was
Wow.
really interesting.
That's
Yeah.
a superpower.
No shit. There have been
I mean,
times
I
I
guess,
wish.
man, yeah, I've never had that. I mean, I've had the experience where trips come in waves where
Mhm.
like suddenly you do feel completely sober and you're like, you get to kind of review the insanity for a few minutes,
Yes.
but then all of it's like, oh, it's coming back. I can't speak
Waves.
English anymore. You know, it's gone.
Yeah, exactly. I tend to be paired with people who can't stop talking, which is good because I can't start talking. Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah. Are you the talker or the
I'm the
listener?
one that's making all the similes. It's like, oh my God, it's like.
I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna laugh at you because I can't form a fucking sentence. I don't even remember what my first language is, much less
Yeah.
my third or fourth. Yeah. So DMT, I'm jealous. You have obviously some kind of a I kind of messaged you earlier today to
That was
see if you
great.
had some steady hookup on that, but it's I
Not even
find
close. No, it's a funny story how I even have the DMT that I'm may or may not be in possession of. But I asked a friend of mine. It's kind of one of those friends that he's in. He's a biker, so he's in with a lot of interesting people,
uh-huh.
and he can get anything, you know. And so I asked him if he had any. This was a couple of years back, and he he said, "Yeah, I'll ask this guy I know." And he gets back to me. He's like, I got it for you and it's free. I'm like, why is it free? He's like, well, because the guy told me that the angels told him to stop profiting from it. So he gave it
Wow.
to me for free and
Cool.
Wow.
it's yours now. I'm like, oh, wow, that's interesting.
Fantastic.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I've read about it for decades, but I've never had an experience with it. I've tried ayahuasca once, but
Oh,
DMT
wow.
is still my goal. Yes.
Hmm.
Did you have I mean, were they transformative experiences?
I've only broken through once,
Mhm.
and the breakthrough is like almost like a repressed memory. In
Interesting.
fact, I'm probably one of the only people that has reported that my salvia divinorum experiences were more. Um, I've been able to take more back from them than
Yes.
the very couple times I've done DMT.
Mhm.
Well, I technically have done it 3 times, but one time it wasn't really a breakthrough, but it's a totally different story altogether. But I can tell that later. But
Okay.
the salvia divinorum, in particular, was insanely powerful.
Yeah.
And in ways that I wish I could have written down all the details so I could ponder for thousands
Yeah,
of years.
exactly.
Because whatever was coming out of consciousness under those specific chemical circumstances was the most interesting thing I've ever witnessed.
Yeah, salvia is definitely a strange creature, strange beast. I remember the last most intense no, it wasn't the last one. It was the second to last one. But I remember my friend left his bong over at my house, and I had some of this salvia because it was legal in Kansas, which is where we're at, for a while. And then all these stupid fucking YouTube videos kept getting posted of everybody having bad trips. And the legislators took cues from that for some reason and decided to make it illegal. So I bought up as much as I could from the local head shops, and they had some, I think, 20 time potency. And
Yeah.
so I put a little in his bong and I took 2 very deep hits. And as I was letting the smoke out of the last hit, I immediately completely lost track of time, and I thought, like, I started thinking, do I have friends over that are visiting and I've just left them in the living room and in here, I've been doing salvia for hours and hours, and like all these strange paranoid scenarios started going off in my, I mean, they didn't freak me out or anything. I thought they were kind of funny.
Mm.
Uh, and for some reason, I rationalized that, okay, I need to check and see if these people are in the living room because they could have been sitting there for hours and hours and hours. So how I thought that would be the proper etiquette to do that was to walk backwards to my living room. And I don't know where the rationalization from that came from, but it seemed to make sense at the time. And needless to say, I didn't have any friends in the living room, and I'd been on salvia for all of 2.5 minutes. But it immediately fucked up my sense of time so much that I was utterly disoriented. Do you have
Yeah,
time shit with salvia?
absolutely.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. This time was unreal. Both ways too.
Mhm.
I've experienced it where the time dilation was so massive that it felt like I had been just like in the desert of mind for centuries with like
Yes.
wind and sand blowing over me as I decayed. It just, but then, things would happen instantaneously too. It was wild. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cartoony,
Yes.
very, everything was a joke. Everything was like not sinister, but I felt like I was the butt of the joke in some way. Like there was a kick me sign on my back.
A
It was
cosmic kick
very,
me sign.
very cryptic. That's for
Huh.
sure. Again, I wish I could have like recorded all the details, but nothing made any sense.
Yeah, I
And it's
get.
interesting to know that there are cultures that consider that a sacrament and use
Yes.
that. It must not have been the way in which I was doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know because there was no uh comprehension. There was not a lot of comprehension
Mhm.
to what was going on. It was just
Yes.
like, yeah, I don't
Yeah. It's strange. Catherine Harrison, Terence McKenna's ex-wife,
know.
has a good set of videos on YouTube that are supposed to be a guide, a good context for doing salvia. I've only gotten through the first one, and I was like, "Fuck it, I'm going to smoke salvia anyway." But I need to go back and really watch those. But I've always had the visual, like whatever I'm seeing, it's like it's printed on a stack of, say, giant playing cards, and then somebody takes the whole deck and smears it to the left, so everything sort of gets smeared diagonally, and then it just mirrors funhouse mirrors into infinity. It's
That
fucking
reminds me
crazy.
of DMT.
Oh yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
Did
The
you?
what's the word? Seeing life through like a prism in a way.
Mhm.
Mm.
And almost like normal reality and my memory and personality and everything was just one little sliver of that light,
Mhm.
and it was like, oh yeah, forgot about that.
I forgot about me.
And
Yeah,
are
yeah.
there any beings with you in that state, or are you by yourself typically?
The only time I've ever had an intelligent encounter, if you will, was on 8 grams of mushrooms. That was the
Mm.
only time ever. And I was comfortable for a long time, just like, and I still am, kind of using the word God as a placeholder. Not that I necessarily can define that word in the spiritual sense, but whatever is going on the other side, the message was really simple. And it felt first like the most endearing a hug I've ever had. And I
Well,
felt
that's
more
good.
at home. And it felt like, every family member and loved one ever combined, that's something just
Mm.
so unbelievably powerful and humbling, yet comforting. Um, and the message was simply that it's okay. It's always been okay. It's always okay. And it always will be okay. And it was pure gnosis. It wasn't just like, oh, cool, I'll take that into consideration. It was like the absolute knowledge, the proof, I guess you could say, of why those statements were absolutely true and indestructible. but can't remember why. No logic was attached. That's the
Yeah,
problem.
of
As soon
course.
as you come back, you're dealing with the logical side of the brain, and the brain does wild things with that ineffable experience, like builds churches or mosques or all kinds of things.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you ever tried to do any recordings of those experiences, like during the experiences?
No, honestly, nothing really. It's unfortunate, but I think it's kind of poetic in a way that I have a podcast now as an older adult, but in my youth, so much interesting wisdom, I guess you could say, came out of conversations in those states. And we would always leave a room saying, man, it's too bad we didn't record that, And
Yeah.
so I'm glad to be here now doing these kinds of conversations. And it's good that it's been years and years so I can look back. But at the same time, it's been years and years. And I'm like teetering on the edge, like of whether I should do it ever again. I don't even
Yeah.
know if the ego I've built since then can handle it.
Do you do the kind of mandate that set and setting is important for you? So
1,000%.
are
Yeah.
you an outdoor person when in those experiences, or did you do it like in your house? I always thought it was because I grew up I grew up in the 70s, but I was doing psychedelics a lot in the 80s.
Mhm.
And I found it interesting that people would go to clubs.
Yeah, I
And
did
Wow.
too.
and there's certain drugs I could go to a club on. Cocaine for
Hell yeah.
sure.
That's a hell of a drug.
Ecstasy for
Ecstasy,
sure.
yeah, all
I
day.
could go dance in a club, but mushrooms, anything like that, I just wanted to be outside. I wanted to be in nature, ocean, like anywhere that was more grounded maybe.
Mhm.
How about you? Did you feel like you wanted to be in a natural setting, or you could be, at your local pub?
Well, I definitely agree with you about the like the clubbing or the pubs or something. I'd never liked that situation at all. I couldn't handle it. I was too into the experience to be able to manage social situations,
Yeah.
and I know that some people are like, well, that's half the fun of it. I have friends like that. And it's like, cool, go for it. That's clearly not what my personality is geared towards.
Yeah.
I've done it alone in a closet, you know. uh, but yeah, that's more of my thing. It doesn't have to be outside, but outside was always an amazing experience. Night versus day was also something fun to play with because both were beautiful
Yeah.
sunrises and sunsets, and
Yeah.
you can get as deep as you want into those themes. But like, man, one time it was just a few of us really good friends, 3 people that had grown up together since we were 6 together
Mm.
at a house that we had ridden bikes around and to all
Wow.
our lives. So it was a really perfect experience for LSD. And, just had a big ass blanket out on the backyard, perfect New England summer night, frogs chirping in the background. Everything was beautiful. I was having a rough time, but
Mm.
because of the set and setting, nothing went wrong. It was just simply that the LSD wasn't like sitting well with me. Like I
Yeah.
wasn't, I guess my mind wasn't in the right place. Who knows? I didn't have any deep revelations or anything on that trip, but it was a very sensual kind of trip. But because of the set and setting, it made everything okay. 2 best friends outdoors in nature, everything was okay. I do feel that when you're outside tripping, there's, I don't know, there's less of a governor on the situation in the sense that like you're more able to let the experience take control and let it flow. When you're inside, you might have a lot of different attachments that you could look to, and I don't know, I'm just spitballing, but I know that that's what I got from nature. It always felt like everything was, we'd go outside because it felt like our lungs got bigger and
Yeah.
the space around us, we got bigger, because we were the environment, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I totally get it. I found that if I was in a club setting, on MDMA, the filter went away. So I was saying things to people that were probably inappropriate, like calling them out on their shit. Like you could
Can we do this
see.
tomorrow?
Yeah, exactly. You could see like the truth of someone, and then just going up and saying that, which is not always what someone wants to hear when they're not on MDMA.
Right.
You
For
know,
instance.
so that I kind of quickly learned that's probably not the best idea to do that.
Yeah.
But it really interesting experience in my 30s was renting a house that was owned by a set director, an art director in California in Joshua Tree. So he had like 3,000 books and not a
Oh my.
TV, and the just being in Joshua Tree with all these amazing rocks and being able to be indoor and outdoor
Yeah.
was really an amazing experience, because you had the insular safety of being in a house, but no Wi-Fi, no TV, no media to kind of penetrate your reality. And I really enjoyed that. But I do agree, it has to be that there's an alchemy to the combination of the people and the place that you're in.
Yeah, and again, it's about, our personalities. It seems like you and I have that similarity in that case. Like a good friend of mine, total opposite. He would be the one to take way too much acid, or at least from
Yes.
my perspective.
Yeah.
At one instance, we were at what we call up here in Massachusetts, ZooMass, which is University of Massachusetts out in the sticks, and it's just the party place. And he took way too much, and he disappeared for like a day, and he just went all over campus saying hi to everybody, dressed in a ridiculous Halloween costume. It was just great. I can't do that. I could never. If someone unexpected showed up, it was like, what's
Yes.
happening? Does this mean something? Should I stand up? What's happening right now?
Is he gonna fuck with my entire
Can I sit down again?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way. Totally. I
Oh.
know I had friends who could take acid at their mom's funeral if they felt like it. Like, no, thank you. No, I need to be in a very safe place.
Yeah,
Yes.
our fragile egos, right?
Exactly. Like I was me and my friend were camping at on my grandma's land, and the night had gone by, we'd peaked, we were coming down but still very much feeling it, and we were kind of out in the boonies, but our fucking radio batteries died. We were really digging the music. So it's like, should we take the chance and go into civilization and get some batteries? And we finally, for some stupid ass reason, decided to do that. And then billboards became more and more uh, present. And then we finally get to the fucking convenience store and walk in. And the first thing I see when I look over to my side is this older lady sort of hunched over the counter talking to the clerk there. And she's got a huge bloody gash on her forehead, and there's blood dripping down her face. And she's asking the clerk, who's probably all of 18 years old, can I just use the phone? These guys, they came and they hurt me, or I didn't understand exactly what she was saying. And she said, I can't let you use the phone. It's only for employees. And then the woman said, then can I have a Dr. Pepper? Like, holy fuck. Let's get back in the woods.
Yeah.
It was like fucking Fear and Loathing in Lebanon, Missouri. It was horrible.
Yeah, there's no way of describing the terror that I felt.
Yes, exactly. At least she wasn't reptilian, but
Yeah,
oh my
you're
Lord.
getting the fear.
Oh, God, yeah.
That
Fear
is
gotten.
real.
Yes, absolutely. So, okay, psychedelics got you into these sorts of subjects. What then pushed you into wanting to share this stuff in a podcast form?
So I think it was like 2016 or 17, I got introduced to I think it was Higher Side Chats with Greg Carlwood.
Yeah.
By a friend of mine who was really conspiratorial, and I had been conspiratorial forever, but like after psychedelics and after a few years, specifically in 2008, I kind of I just watched all my rebel friends, everyone that was like kind of against the government with me, kind of suddenly start to think that the good guys got into the government. And I just watched a whole wave of my generation get swept right up into the machine. And
Yep.
that's kind of how it's been ever since. And I got into wicked heavy alcohol right around the same time. And just literally my mentality was, I'm going to pull up a lawn chair and watch this motherfucker burn. You know, it was all over. So I just spun out of control, just like was living the party life for a long time and not paying attention to any of this shit because I knew there was no hope in there. Like I just felt like there was no hope. And because there was no one to listen to me either. You know, like I had those particular psychedelic experiences, definitely had some good conversations with select friends during those experiences. But when it came to the overall picture of everything and how deep I went into the psychedelics in particular, like I didn't share that with a lot of my friends, or they didn't share it with me. Like we didn't have that in common.
Yeah.
They would be done talking about things at the end of the day, you know? So I didn't have this community around me, you know? And so after hearing Higher Side Chats and then Tinfoil Hat and just all these different podcasts all over the board, I was like, I want to be a part of this because I used to do this kind of stuff when I was younger. Like my friend and I did a joke band. We did an early podcast, like right when podcasting was like Joe Rogan was still in his basement, you know, like still barely doing the podcast. So like I was always interested in doing these kind of things anyway. But now it was like kind of the opportunity, like maybe there's a reason for it. Like we're all kind of waking up or something. The world is shooken up right now. And maybe this might be my chance to actually get my perspective into the mix instead of just yelling at my radio as I'm driving, you know, well, no, you got it wrong or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? And so that's kind of how it started. I tried to start with a co-host and it didn't work at all the way we were just on completely different pages. So then I started the Deep Share and just started interviewing as many people that would respond to my emails, you know, and started making a lot of noise on Twitter. And that's how it happened.
Cool. Yeah. I think what first put you on my radar was hearing you on Forbidden Knowledge one time. And you were critical of things that a lot of people in the community, our community, however you want to say it, were just accepting without question. Things like near-death experiences, ancient aliens, all that, aliens in general, and you were questioning that, and I think I find that refreshing because I see so much of that stuff regurgitated without question at all or without any reflection, and I thought that was like, I gotta keep my eye on this guy. So
cool.
Let's just go into some of that, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, it does feel kind of like we're like at this point in those kind of communities, those sub communities, it just feels like everybody's like just trading Pokemon cards at this point. Like there's nothing new coming into it from their perspective, especially from the UFO disclosure perspective. My God, we're just relying on the enemy. We're sleeping with the enemy to give us the truth. It's hilarious.
Exactly.
It's the Stockholm syndrome of a lifetime.
For sure. It's like, I need to have validation from my abusive father. It's like, why the fuck?
Yeah, that one. Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So what do you think? I mean, do you think that these aliens are something from another planet? I don't know what your take on the cosmology as far as flat Earth, round Earth, whatever, whether you even are concerned with that. But what do you think that is? Do you think they're my labs?
So I think this is a really it's like the center of my questioning, you know. I think it's a huge topic, and I think all the right people in all the right places say all the right things that allude to what I'll say here. But of course, they frame it under intelligences like interdimensional aliens or something like that, or just physical aliens. They allude to it coming from the Earth, possibly instead of from space. So they have all these feelers out there to shape the community, kind of, or at least frame it in the right way. But to me, the mystery is consciousness. The mystery is what we're swimming in and what we are and how we're connected and what what that psychedelic experience really is. And, I think in a way they have been able to kind of obfuscate that through, how do I put this? The personification of what is pure consciousness or us, or the mystery of whatever this sacred other is that we've been talking about since the yin yang was first drawn and interpreted as a fish chasing its own tail, wondering if there was another fish. And I think that's the heart of this question. And that's why Lou Elizondo and other people, even in military government positions, will say things like, this would melt everybody's brain, man. Like, we got to be piece by piece. We got to do it slow, because this would really, what if everything you've been taught, everything you think you know is wrong? It's like, yeah, all that's true. That's true about the mystery, but they're going to tell you this is how you should look at it.
Yes.
Right.
And in my opinion, because of my research into history and folklore and mythology, the spiritual aspect of religion looks very much like the same psyop that's going on in modern times with aliens. It's the same psyop, just new language, upgraded language in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can stop there yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I have, in my research and readings of like Stephen Hawking, for example, one thing that he said that really kind of struck me, and this is years and years ago, he said that, well, it's fascinating that we have to anthropomorphize aliens, that they have to have legs and arms and eyes and look human, in quotes, or have human-like characteristics.
Humanoid. Yeah.
And one thing that he said is it's probably more likely that it would be nebulous gas that would be an alien than a arm and leg little blue man that we have been, that narrative that we've been fed. And one thing that he said in kind of elucidating that thought is, we shouldn't necessarily be urging this encounter to happen, because we don't know what this would be or how this would interact with the human experience. So I've always found that fascinating, that when aliens are discussed, it is, ET, or it's, this kind of frightening version of Whitley Strieber, but it's always this 2 arms, 2 legs, eyes, so
Yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts about that? Do you think
Well,
that version is what is real, in quotes?
No, I don't. There's definitely a connection between like the gray aliens and what Crowley drew during channeling, that
Yeah.
lamb, or
Yes.
there's another word for it, but that's too uncanny, right? There's something there that means something. I do think that gray archetype. Reptilian, that's a different story. That's misinterpretation of symbolism, in my opinion, and it comes directly from people like Zachariah Sitchin, who have been eviscerated when it comes to linguistics.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that as like some shill for the mainstream, like, I listen to this establishment linguist, so therefore Sitchin is wrong. No, Sitchin's wrong. But the gray alien thing, that there's something to it. I'm definitely not trying to say that none of it is real, by no, like none of it is entities that we are unaware of, but there's a lot of interesting connections between well, a lot of subjects that are real hard to talk about, like what the Nazi tech was at the time, and what they were working with, like the Vril Society and all that kind of stuff, and what we see in the skies today. And when you think about paperclip, well, why does the public have a version of paperclip? Why would they ever allow us to know that, if it was something that we would, oh my God, like, we're working with Nazis, like, what are you talking about? So I think there's a way to like rationalize this in human terms on some scale, But at the same time, they lace all of it with allegory and metaphor to all of our sacred spiritual texts and spiritual ideologies. They connect together. And Mr. Lou Elizondo is a big proponent of that. He reminds me of a guy that's supposed to look like an uncle flipping burgers in a commercial. Like, and I swear that's like literally his target audience, like that will buy that. I'm like, oh, he looks like my uncle. He's a good guy. So he puts that out there all the time. He recently made some long post about these things, like you're going to have to question everything and all that. And he's dead on, I think, but the way he frames it is particularly this thing that's been going on forever, it seems, which is this: we cannot acknowledge that we are all one, it seems, because at least from my experiences, and then from my experiences looking at all the ancient texts and reading what other people have said, it seems like they're coming to the same conclusion, that this kind of law of one exists, where it's almost as if God is playing with action figures in the backyard and we're the action figures. You know what I mean? And those are my experiences. I'm not trying to force them on anybody, but I just ask a lot of questions about, these superhero lives we're living after we leave our meat suits and all that. To me, this is a very alchemical experience. One doesn't exist without the other, and especially when it comes to like me, myself, and personality, especially if we're all, this one thing. And if that's what's being obfuscated, that would lead me to believe that, well, who's doing the obfuscating, or the force that's hiding this is actually like God playing hide and seek with himself. I mean, I'm just using that word God to, of course, in place of something that's unknowable. But sometimes I like to describe it as possibly a culmination of consciousness. But literally, I think that's still coming at it from a selfish human point of view, as if we are the real thing, these personalities that we take on, and we're going to carry some part of these individuations to this higher realm. For some reason, it doesn't jive with how the ancient texts are put together and everything, to me, at least.
I just had a thought when you were speaking that was because of what you were saying. But what if God is the earth? Like, what if, I mean, it's possible because we all come from the earth and we all go back to the earth when we die. So maybe the human expression of our consciousness is the individual, but outside of that, it's the place. It's like the mother feeding the baby with the breast. Like the baby, for the baby, that is the world. That breast is the world. The mother that's feeding, that is all the world is. And everything else is a distraction from that experience that's happening. So perhaps our mother that's feeding us is this planet that we're on, and we are being mesmerized or convinced that these other things around us are the things that are really important, when in reality it's this thing that we're standing on.
That's beautiful. I love that. It reminds me of Alan Watts talking about like how the earth peoples like an apple tree apples, but also it's still I think I kind of lost where I was going to go with that, but jump in, man. I'll think of it.
I was just going to say that kind of sort of constrains it to the physical world. Unless
that's what I was going to say.
Okay. Unless that's just the physical manifestation of something that's much more multi-dimensional or multi-frequency.
Right.
Well, I think we have to, if you don't mind, I think we have to look at the physical as like the other side of the equal signs from the math problem. And the math problem is that spiritual realm, that it is the wonder, it is the what if, it is the superposition, if you want to use like quantum physics perspective, right? That's why I think we get presented with the multiverse in a twisted way as well, because I think multiverse is another perspective on superposition. And I've read papers on it, and I'm not a physicist, but trying to dissect it, at least there are physicists who talk about that correlation, and they bring in like what's his name, Mandelbrot's set, the fractal idea into that idea, which is, triggers a million things and stands all my hair up, because the fractal was one of the biggest revelations of my trips.
Sure.
It's almost a way to look at life.
Absolutely. Or
So where was
holographic.
I? I lost my train of thought. Where the hell
But we
was it?
don't know what the soul of the earth is. So
Sure.
we're saying that the earth is the human or the physical manifestation of itself. Well, what is the soul of the earth then?
That's a
So
good question.
maybe that's just another layer of God.
Absolutely. I think, the as above, so below hermetic principle is like, it can be taken a lot of different ways, and that's probably on purpose. But, like you said, a different layer to God, perhaps, right? What is it? Omnism or panentheism, somewhere in there. It's this idea that just everything is God. Everything is sentience and everything is God. And, I got to a place in my trips, some of my really deep trips, where there was no beer anymore. There was only being, the verb. And I've heard Alan Watts and all these other philosophers throughout time talk about that principle, that, again, get rid of this, what we think of as ego. I think, we have to look at it a little deeper than that, because it goes like, even in Buddhism, the self is attachment. Yourself, that's possession.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm kind of all over the place here, but you guys are picking up what I'm putting down.
Sure. Yeah, the self is something. Well, anything that is not supposed to have, in reality, quote unquote, an inherent meaning in and of itself. It all is conditional. It all is because
Right.
of the context that it's within. So it's not like something is separate from anything else. It wouldn't exist without everything else that's surrounding it. I don't know if that
Exactly.
makes any sense.
But it's all awareness.
Bingo.
That too.
Bingo.
So
And that is being.
exactly. So this is where I think a lot of people get confused with gender politics or identity politics, is this idea that they are the center of the universe because of their gender or their identity, whatever identity they have assigned to themselves. When if there, I'm just spitballing, if there truly are 8 billion people, that means that there's 8 million identities. And that's or 8 billion identities. And that's just the humans. That's not considering the animal world or the plant world. So if you do distill it back into a one being, one perception, one reality, that means I've got to love Bill Gates. God damn it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So this is where it gets tough, and this is that thing where people will say shit like, and it even boils down to the atheist, like, well, if God, but why would he kill everybody in a tsunami, man?
Yeah.
It's like, wow, you're thinking too locally, bro.
Yes.
Like, you're thinking like a puny human. And that's where we get this like paranoid thing about like these aliens, these gods, these elites, they think we are shit. And yes, a lot of them do on very human levels. I get that. But like when we're reading these ancient texts and looking at like our mythology and stuff, we look at that and we think that way. And it's like, well, I think this is the difference between the adept, the one that has been initiated, and that's a trigger word in this community, but those who have been initiated versus those who have not. I mean, it's night and day. It in an instant was obvious to me that psychedelics or trauma or perturbation, at least of normal day consciousness, was an integral part of becoming an adult. Back in the day, in every single culture, they had their own means of that, whether it was killing a bear on your own or surviving 12 days out in the wilderness, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Psychedelics or not.
Fasting.
Yes, exactly. Like this was how to become an adult, was to literally face your internal self.
Exactly.
And, I think with psychedelics, with the spiritual aspect, it goes a lot deeper than just killing a bear. I really do. I think there are levels to it. Which is weird to me, because you'd think that the experience should just be perfect no matter how you do it, right? And that
Yeah.
calls into question, like, what's more powerful, or is something more powerful, like the psychedelics versus meditation versus near-death experience? You know, I mean, is it a spectrum? Is it,
It is. I think it is.
it is. It certainly
Yeah.
is. And I don't know where we're going here, but let me say this.
Go for
To
it.
me, I call into question, even though I've had really deep experiences, and I love talking to near-death experiencers because for some reason I relate mostly to
Mhm.
them. I still wonder if everything we are experiencing is still being rationalized, put through the filters of mind. And when we are even able to first reflect on it, it's already something we've put together that is comfortable and logical to us. And I know that's going to fly in a lot of people's beliefs and faiths and stuff. And I'm not trying to poke any bears here, but it feels like, in a simple term, it feels like even all of our transcendental experiences could still be a product of our duality and could
Right.
still be mind,
Right. Because
even though
it's
it feels like we're viewing something
exactly
beyond mind.
because we're
I think it's just
taxonomist.
it's like we get a little model
Yeah.
in the mail. That's what the psychedelics kind of felt like to me, where it's like you get to kind of see what this experience is real quick. You
Yeah.
get to kind of get that whole view, even though you're just one little person right now. You kind of
Yeah.
get that real quick. But that doesn't mean suddenly the Luciferians end up going, "Oh, I'm God.
Mhm.
Okay, now I get it." And they run around thinking nihilistic shit, you know?
Yeah.
Right. But
Sorry,
I
I threw a
think
lot out there, but I'm
but
sure
I
we can
think
pick up the
Throw
pieces.
it.
but I
Throw it,
think
baby.
but I think what you're saying is that the part of the human version of a transcendental experience or a transient experience, something from another level, is that we have to go through this process of filing those things in certain parts of the brain and then distilling those things down. And the reason we do that is because maybe some people would go mad. They wouldn't be
Absolutely.
able to take all that information and then digest it and then be able to build a mosque or build a church or write it down or record it
Yeah,
in music because it's too much.
I think
way
that's
too much.
Yeah, so we just filter what we can handle
Yeah.
or maybe the lesson we
Absolutely.
need from that experience.
that's why you can only bring back so much, I think, is because that's all that is
And it's
applicable.
worrisome when people claim to bring back so much.
Mhm.
Not always. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but when people just come back with all the answers, it's like,
Yeah.
well, that's a big red flag, you know?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, do you think that dualism is a necessary evil because of the physical existence that we live in? Do you think that that's those two kind of have to go hand in hand?
I really think I think it's the way it is. I really
Mhm.
do. I feel like the more I learn and from, like, you know, about our history, about humanity, about our behavior, and then juxtapose it with my crazy psychedelic experiences and what I've learned on that scale. Yeah, a lot of times it feels like we're in a painting that's absolutely glorious, but we don't see the beauty in it. We're just kind of stuck in all the rough parts. You know, it's perfect the way it is. Nothing is out of place. You know, the energy is balanced out exactly as it's supposed to be, and it is
Mhm.
every single second of the illusion of time that we experience.
Yeah.
No matter how many people are quote unquote suffering, I don't know how to uh, rationalize that from a everybody's God point of view. The idea, I have a real hard time. My wife and I battle with this a lot together. We kind of avoid the topic. This idea of we chose to be here, and I think there's some element to that. I really do. I think karma's a thing. I think action and reaction, and there's something to that. Absolutely, but people get so vivid with it. People just create sci-fi Avenger movies out of it, and it sends up so many red flags to me. It's like, well, you've figured this all out, huh? You've named all your spirit guides. Like, I can't get behind that necessarily. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily wrong. I just think we have to start from base level first. And when we look at like our most precious ancient wisdom when it comes to consciousness, it does match up with like mathematics, and it does all reduce to one. And that one is everything. or some would argue it even reduces to zero, which is like the source of all integers, right?
Mhm.
So it's yeah, Buddhism talks about the pregnant void, and that's all there really is, this
Mhm.
void of possibility.
Yeah.
That to call it an illusion is wrong, but to call it real is subjective.
Andy Rouse.
Andy Rouse.
Wow.
Live from a theater near you.
That was fucking awesome.
Yeah, it was good.
Wow.
It's a great conversation.
Yeah. What I like about that conversation is that we have gone down some dark corners and dark alleyways recently, talking about, all of these bad actors and their nefarious agendas. And it was really nice. It was a breath of fresh air to talk to someone about really interesting things. We started in the psychedelic realm and then went on to this just magical journey with him. And I really, really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was good. I liked him. Like I said, what put him on my radar is him having a different view on a lot of things that people just seem to parrot. And I think that it's really important to self-reflect and question, okay, so I've said this about that. Where did I get that at? Of course, I didn't have direct experience with this narrative. I'm just really passing it along from somebody else because it sounded good. Which, I mean, there's something to be said about that. But to put all of your eggs in one basket, I think can be misleading. And then that can lead to a chain reaction of lots of jumping from one lily pad to another, and before you know it, you're so far away from the actual course of events that you're just far off base. So I think it's important to keep an open mind, and one of the ways we do that is to question and be critical of the very things that we aren't, simply put.
And you're okay with someone maybe nudging Terence McKenna into the controlled opposition realm?
I think if that one quote is the only thing that is being gone on, or base that narrative on, I'm not sure that I think I would have to maybe listen to that again myself and see what the greater context of that is. Besides that, I was thinking that there would be more of a narrative as far as that's concerned, but I can't say that I buy that just yet, that he's a controlled op. And still, like I've said about much of the music that is supposedly coming from these bad actors or sons and daughters of bad actors, I still have a relationship with that music that has nothing to do with the background or the greater context of that. So it's about that to me, as it is about that connection that I had with Terrence's information,
Mhm.
uh, that I still hold on to. Not hold on to. That sounds like I would use it as a security blanket or something, but I still think that he has a lot of very interesting things to say. He's a great storyteller and a fantastic articulator. Um, so that doesn't take anything away from that. I mean, I'm not a worshiper. I don't have a Terence McKenna shrine by any means, but I still I still respect him, and I want to hear more. I'm open to him being whatever, but I was thinking that there was more to it than just that.
Well, there was. I mean, he went on to say that he talked about it at length. So,
Could he?
I think I have to look at all of the players at that time and what roles all of those players were playing. And we know for a fact, because, his wife has admitted this, that Timothy Leary was working with the CIA.
Oh, Timothy Leary's admitted it.
Right. Gloria Steinem was working with the CIA. A lot of these folks that were very influential during that time period were CIA operatives. We know that they were working, the MK Ultra program was working through universities throughout the United States and the world. So, that being said, it is entirely possible that he was a CIA operative. It's entirely possible that Castaneda was a CIA operative, um, knowingly or unknowingly. As I said before, it's possible that these experiments were being conducted, research was being conducted, monies were being given to certain professors, to certain doctors, and they didn't realize that that was necessarily CIA money. Carl Rogers, famous psychologist who started the whole group therapy movement, he was a CIA operative. So it's not it is within the realm of possibility that McKenna was. One just funky sidebar that I didn't mention to Andy, but I know we've talked about before when you interviewed me a couple of years ago, is that when all of the witches in the Castaneda realm left the United States and left Los Angeles, what I was told is they went to Finland. So when he mentioned in the Bock Saga Helsinki and that being heaven or hell, or maybe both, I just found that interesting that of all the places on this planet they would go, that they would end up in Finland.
Yeah, interesting. I don't know what to do. I don't have anything.
I don't know. It's freaky though.
I forgot about the Esalen connection too. I don't know much about that, so I can't put. I just think that sometimes we want to put something in the black category, and sometimes we want to put something in the white category. And I really think that there's a lot more nuance there than we realize. And it's hard to know what amount of nuance there is without actually having been there. So, I don't know. It's just like Leonard Cohen. We're going to interview Ann Diamond on Monday, I believe. And she's going to have a lot of very hard to hear things for Leonard Cohen fans to say about Leonard Cohen. But do I still think his first 4 albums are incredible? Fuck yes. Yeah, it doesn't ruin that for me. So it just adds an interesting layer. I don't feel like I have to boycott these people necessarily unless I find out they're involved in pedophilia or something like that. That would be different. But if they were unwittingly involved in a scheme that they weren't hip to, or they were misled and something beyond their I can't articulate. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, with the information that I have, that doesn't spoil Terence McKenna for me. I'm open to being, convinced otherwise, but with the little info that I have, I'm still all right with Terence. Terence is just all right with me.
Well, I know we've talked about this a lot before. Can you separate the art from the artist, or are those two things intrinsically entwined and can't be separated?
Yeah.
When I first watched Woody Allen films as a child, because I started watching them when I was way too young to be watching them, I remember back then thinking, wow, this is, I never thought this is problematic, but I thought this is weird that this grown man is having a relationship with a 17-year-old. This is a little strange. And then as history kind of, you look back in the rearview mirror and other things come to light, it's interesting to then look back on those films again and say, wow, these are really,
Autobiographical.
there's issues here. And, I think with the music, it's easy to have a little touch of Stockholm syndrome where you don't want to lose the relationship you have uh, with that time period. And so we associate so much with the music of that time period to our own life experiences. And maybe it's hard to acknowledge the hypnotism or the mesmerism of those songs, of those lyrics, of that music. And so it's possible that you're experiencing some of that as well. But that doesn't mean that invalidates your experience. It just
it
means
doesn't. I'm
that
totally fine with my experience.
it just means that for you, that hypnotism is important to you and you don't want to let go of it. And that's your journey, that no one is here to tell you that's right or wrong.
Okay, let me comment on it.
Okay.
To call it hypnotism, I believe, is subtly sort of condescending.
It's not at all. I
It
mean,
is, because
music is hypnotizing.
sure, absolutely, it's a spell, just like movies are spells.
Mhm.
Images and music. But
Yeah.
if these songs to me were, for instance, were telling me what my values should be, who I should be loving, what I should find important, what I should be pledging my allegiance to. They were giving me instructions for how to live my life about things, then that would be a different story.
But they are. They
I don't
are.
think that they are in a substantial way. I
Listen
feel
to
like
Gino Vanelli.
I don't know. I mean, the name sounds familiar.
She was 15 years old.
Doesn't make, I don't know that song, but it doesn't make
he's
me
a
want to go out and get a 15-year-old.
Right. But he's a grown man that's singing that song, that's talking about being with someone who's an underage person.
Okay. Yeah, I don't recall liking a song that has to do with that.
Nick Lowe, Hot Child in the City.
It's not Nick Lowe. Nick Gilder.
Nick Gilder, Hot Child in the City, running wild and looking pretty.
I think that's, again, that's being too literal. I don't think he's meaning a child. I think that's like, just like there's a Voodoo Child, the Jimi Hendrix song. I think he's talking about a child, like an adolescent. I don't think so. I'm choosing not to take it that way.
Yeah.
So then it doesn't affect me that way. Nor am I going to take my cues about how to behave from fucking rock and roll songs. So there's stories just like anything else. So I'm a sophisticated discerner of the stimulus that I take in.
Right.
And
But were you when you were 12?
No, not as much, obviously, but I wasn't going out and trying to find groupies
Running wild and looking pretty.
for instance. So it never applied to me. Those were like works of fiction to me. They weren't like lessons. I didn't feel like I was sitting at the feet of my teacher when I was listening to Kiss records, for God's sakes. I knew that it was outlandish behavior that I had no desire to imitate. And it was like, this is so bigger than life. Not something I should be working towards, but fun to listen to it, like comic books.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, that's I don't feel like I have to apologize for liking Led Zeppelin.
No one's asking you.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying that in general. Some people like hear about this stuff and they feel like they've got to keep away and poo-poo everything that had to do with Laurel Canyon. And
well, okay. So just touching on that slightly before we wrap up, because we both have things to do. I am friends and have been very closely associated with someone who was at Laurel Canyon in that time period. And she talked about the grooming of children to be with rock stars. Now we're talking about 13-year-old little girls. We're talking about 14-year-old little girls that were fucking Jimmy Page and fucking Robert Plant and having relationships and affairs with grown men that were brought into basically, I don't want to use the term trafficked, but they basically were being trafficked so that these little girls could have relationships, sexual relationships with grown men.
Okay.
So I think it's easy to try to disconnect or disassociate yourself from that stuff, but it does not mean that that behavior was not problematic.
Of course not. No, I'm not saying that at all. It has nothing to do with the night I listened to physical graffiti over and over and over again in an Arizona valley as the moon went over the slowly rippling lake that I was sitting in front of. It's a great memory. Like, has nothing to do with what groupie Robert Plant fucked. Like, I don't associate the two. I don't. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm just justifying. I don't feel like I'm purchasing that sort of behavior by listening to that music.
But you're funding it by buying the record.
I pirate that shit, yo. I go to used record stores and I'm too much of a cheapskate to buy that stuff new. And how much money do they get from it anyway? The groupies have already been fucked. Like,
aww,
many of them write
that's a bummer.
write memoirs looking
many of
fondly
them
back
killed
on those days.
themselves.
But many of them, I didn't say all of them. I just said many of them. Like, I was 14 and I fucked David Bowie and I don't regret it. And I thought it was one of the best experiences of my life. Like, where are those stories in the media?
Oh my God. I can't believe we've gone down this rabbit hole. I do not consent to any of that, of someone at 14 looking back as an adult and saying that was the best experience.
You don't have to consent to it.
That adult should have not fucked that 14-year-old. That adult should have been like, where are the 35-year-old women here in the room that I can fuck? Because there's plenty of hot ones in here. So why don't I fuck one of them as opposed to fucking a child? That's my line. I'm sorry. You know.
Why are you sorry?
Because I feel like you're defending someone who engaged in bad behavior.
I don't think so. I'm just divorcing that from the artwork.
You're defending their art.
I'm not defending their art.
Okay.
Well, yeah, maybe defending their art, but not defending their lifestyle.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's good. I like that. I can hang my hat on that.
I can not associate the two. If I were going out and giving them money or funding them or in some way, then I would feel directly connected to it. But I don't feel directly connected to it.
Gotcha.
I grew up with that shit. I don't feel like it taught me to be a horrible human being. I have fond memories of it and the things that were happening while I was listening to that music. That's what I base my assessments on.
I got it. That makes sense.
Thank you. Oh, I hope people still like us or like me after what am I saying?
Oh,
Like
they
me
love
after
you.
this.
Everyone loves you. It's fine.
I felt
It's
like Howard
totally
Stern
fine.
there for a little bit. So I apologize to people. I just sometimes I say things that even sometimes sound or feel controversial to me to just see if I'm full of shit, just to get it out there and go, okay, how would another human being react to me saying this? And maybe put it into perspective for me in a way that I'm not taking the time to do it myself.
All I'm saying is that part of this psyop, part of the MK Ultra mind control psyop was normalizing
Of course.
sex with children.
For sure.
And a lot of that was happening. So for me, I can't separate the art from the artist. To me, these are problematic men that were aided by many women. Many women were helping this stuff happen. And that's where I divorce myself from that stuff. It's like, you know what? I don't need to be a part of that. I don't need to listen to that music. I know the seed of where this was and what was happening, and I know some of these people, and I find them not to be good people.
Okay.
And many of them hide behind religion now, which I find very curious.
Leonard Cohen included.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm excited to talk to Ann Diamond.
Yeah. It'll be a great conversation. We've gone on much longer than we had anticipated.
Yeah, but it's all cool. I'm going to take my final. You're going to put the chickens in. We're going to say goodnight to our son. And
He goes to bed in 2 minutes.
no, we can let him stay up for another halfie. He'll be fine. Little half hour.
We can't.
It's Friday night. Come on. Where's your rock and roll spirit?
Don't tickle me. Okay. Thank you for listening. I am in the process. Don't do that. I'm in the process.
I did it on film too.
I know you did, but there's no film involved. I'm in the process of uploading all of our usually Patreon only material to Locals, which I think will be a more hospitable place. They will be in both places until we get kicked off of Patreon, which I do think is probably inevitable at some point. So yes, I will be, after all of that stuff is posted, check for the links below everything else, and you can find us there if you don't want to contribute to Patreon and what they're about. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you, patrons, for helping to make this podcast possible and allowing us to grow it the way that we have. My goal is to manifest this as something I can commit to full time, along with documentary making. And yes, this, you think it's good now, it could be so much better. And so now would be the time to subscribe while it's still $3, because I'm going to raise it to $5 before the end of the year. So anything else to add?
Protect the children. That's
Protect the children.
Protect the children. That's what we're here to do.
That's the only thing.
Love Mother Earth. And yeah, that's all I got. Okay. I wrote it down. Now I'm just slap happy. I'm being silly. I love you guys. Thank you.
If you would like to get a hold of us to suggest guests, anything else, casserole recipes that we can't eat right now with our current diet, but our kids can, or praise, blame, whatever. The Melt Podcast at protonmail.com.
Hunter-Muse at protonmail.com.
Thank you all for listening. Hopefully you got something positive from this, and disregard everything I said afterwards, please. Okay. Much love.
Bye.
Ta-ta.
Meow, 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 meow.